kick off the program with, what you heard Recco mention toward the tail end of his update there, which was a crazy day at Madison Square Garden yesterday. We'll get to the game and all the fights and the 6 and the 3 right off the face-off and off the jump last night, Wilson and everything with the Rangers and Capitals. But, as we got off the airwaves yesterday, handed off to Craig and Evan. We were debating about just how physical it was going to be. The Rangers don't have a choice. I understand that they don't have guys like Kreider and Trouba in the lineup last night. Those guys are out due to injury, and we saw the statement giving accolades to the Rangers for what a strong statement that was against the National Hockey League and George Parros. And then news comes down that the Rangers fired John Davidson and their general manager, Jeff Gordon. So JD out. Gordon out, obviously, as we all know now, and that Dolan made the decision. Chris Drury steps in, assumes both roles, president and general manager, former Ranger. We know that dating back to the Little League, and we can talk about his pizza joints up here in Connecticut and Westchester and the like, which are fantastic, by the way. Colony is a great pizza joint. But anyway, put that aside, it was just an embarrassing day. I mean, any way you cut it, it was an embarrassing day for the Rangers, and for a lot of different ways. You might not agree with what the Rangers or the game plan, or you might look at this year as being a disappointment, and that's fine. But, with the way that the season was set up, 56 games within the division, with it playing with the likes of the Bruins, the Islanders, the Penguins, and obviously the Washington Capitals, being the youngest team in the National Hockey League, having, Mika Zibanejad dealing with COVID, coming back, taking him a while to bounce back off of that, missing a ton of games with Artemi Panarin after that Russian story came out. Two of the better players on this team. And you mean to tell me that you're looking at this year and you're saying, okay, well, I don't agree with it. You need it to be a playoff team this year, which I would say is complete utter nonsense. But you want to say, okay, well, they're not a physical team. Well, fair. I mean, we talked about that all throughout the course of the morning and into the afternoon yesterday, Maggie, about the lack of grit on this Ranger team. But this was never a team this year that was winning a Stanley Cup. You can make the argument that maybe they could have been a playoff team if everything broke right for them. And if there wasn't a stoppage last year, the Rangers would have been a playoff team. They ended up getting steamrolled by Carolina in that play-in tournament, but they were playing some of their best hockey of the season last year when the season came to a halt, and then we knew that hockey did resume in the summertime. So you look at this, and the decision by Dolan, who has left the hockey program alone, right? Has left it alone, has let other guys do the job. The idea now that you're going to fire Gordon and John Davidson, and as the story and the reports go, he went to John Davidson and said, I want to fire Gordon. And Davidson said, no, we're not firing Jeff Gordon. So James Dolan decided to fire both John Davidson and Gordon. So they're both out. And Davidson, who has not even been with this organization for 2 years, as beloved a figure as there is in Ranger fandom, to treat him that way and to not believe in Davidson, who saw the rebuilding process in St. Louis. I know he wasn't there at the end. Who saw the rebuilding process in Columbus. The main reason why Artemi Panarin is a Ranger today is because of the relationship that John Davidson has with Artemi Panarin when he decided to sign in free agency. That is true. And for Dolan to now step in yesterday afternoon and make this decision and clear out management, in steps Chris Drury, it absolutely is a dark day for the Ranger organization. There is no other way to cut it.
Well, you were reminded yesterday about James Dolan's impatience and why he is one of the worst owners in professional sports. He can't tweak the Knicks right now because the Knicks are now off to a fantastic start under their new regime in year one. So he has to leave them alone. So now the impatience now moves over to the Rangers. And he does the same thing to the Rangers that he had been doing with the Knicks over the last 20 years. If you just flip some of the names, you got the exact same thing going on. Glenn Sather, who is going to be back now advising Chris Drury and is going to sort of help him through this transition. He's the Isaiah Thomas. He's the guy who Dolan always trusts, the foxhole guy, the one who, will always have the ear of James Dolan, and someone who will never actually be more than an arm's length or half an arm's length away from the organization. He's the Isaiah, and I'm not sure if Drury right now is the Mills or the Perry, but I think he's the Mills right now because he's the guy who gets to stay because even though he was part of these last regimes and he was part of what got them there, he's the guy who gets to stay when everyone else has to leave. And listen, I understand if they love Drury, they think he's a rising star in hockey at 44 years old, and obviously his playing career, we all know how great that was. But if he was being sought after by the Pittsburgh Penguins or the Florida Panthers, or they felt like they couldn't afford to lose him, okay, but look at what you just gave up. and because you could not make it work. There is a Game of Thrones element that always exists at Madison Square Garden because James Dolan likes to be the Joffrey here and have all the pieces around him. And look at who survives. The people who survive at Madison Square Garden, the executives, are not necessarily the ones that win all the time. The ones that survive are the blind loyalists to Dolan and the ones who inflate the expectations and then point to everyone else when the team doesn't meet them. It's exactly what happened with the Knicks for years and years. Now, what I hope for the Rangers is that this is a one-off. Does this start a carousel like what we saw with the Knicks for the last 20 years, where now it's coach after coach, now you're moving guys in and out, now it's this big revolving door all the time, now you're trading players out because you have this weird sense that you should be further along than you are, so let's bail on this process and let's just, try to take as many shortcuts as we possibly can in the immediacy because James Dolan is unhappy. Because somebody told James Dolan that this team should be a playoff team this year and they fell short. And oh, by the way, it doesn't matter about all those circumstances you just said, Moose. It doesn't matter about COVID. It doesn't matter about a political hit piece on your star player. It doesn't matter you have one of the youngest teams in the league. It doesn't matter that you're playing in one of the best divisions in hockey. None of that matters because Dolan isn't happy. And the crazy thing about that, Moose, is they put out statements, two statements in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. One was to the league about Peros, about how, Wilson should have been suspended indefinitely. And the other one was about JD and about Gordon getting fired. And in both of those statements, you'll notice there is always that line, this is not enough for our fans because our fans deserve more, because our fans. That's BS. Fans, cross that out in the statement. It's James Dolan, not what's best for the fans, because every Ranger fan from Connecticut to Tom's River and everywhere in between was so colossally ticked off by what happened yesterday and has lost faith in the organization because of this. This was not for the fans. This was for James Dolan. No doubt. Thank you, James, for reminding us again, because we forget for like 5 seconds that he's not one of the worst owners in sports. He is. He showed that yesterday.
No, he absolutely did. I mean, he absolutely did, Maggie. And I, as a Ranger fan, really upset, bothered. I was angered when that news came down. We get the text yesterday from our producer, Pete Hoffman, because right after the show, after we get off the airwaves, about 30, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it might be, like that news comes down, I was stunned. I mean, I could not believe it. And then you get the reports from Darren Dreiger, who covers the National Hockey League, where he's telling you that, both JD and Gordon wanted to distance themselves from the statement that was issued by Dolan through the PR department of the Rangers, that, JD took the bow and arrow or took the knife for Gordon as well because he didn't want to fire Jeff Gordon. And here's the difference, and Maggie, you went through it really well as comparison to the Knicks. The difference is Gordon and John Davidson are actually good at their jobs. So, I mean, like you look at it,
yes,
they're actually...
I know. They should have been fired, yes.
They're actually right. They're actually good at what they do, right? So, I mean, it's not a case where you look at it and say, well, this is... And I heard Messier yesterday say on ESPN, I heard him say, well, this is not the way that I would build a team. Well, this is not a finished product. I mean, it's amazing where you look at the youngest team in the National Hockey League and people are judging it saying, well, this is the finished product. No, it's not the finished product. Well, you have to have guys that go out there and can get dirty. Well, that's fair, but this is also not a finished team. Of course there were going to be adjustments made to this team. Of course, maybe it was a misstep trading Brendan Lemieux, who requested a trade earlier on in the regular season because he was a guy that was actually a winger on this team that had a little bit of a grit. But I look at what went down yesterday, Maggie, and once again, you're right. And Larry Brooks hinted upon it. If he's looking at the Knicks and say, well, look at what Tom Thibodeau's doing here. He's getting a lot out of a little. Look at all the talent we have on this team, and we're not getting as much out of this team as we possibly could. No, you can't compare them. But that's where you get to it. And maybe it is the little birdie in the ear. Maybe it is Glenn Sather, who, by the way, Glenn Sather, when he was with the Oilers, used to rip Neil Smith saying anybody can win in New York because all they do is spend money. This was pre-salary cap, right? So he came here, and Glenn Sather never won anything here running the Rangers, and he's took a step aside. So maybe it is Glenn Sather being the little birdie in the ear. Maybe it is Chris Drury, who turned down the Penguins job. Maybe there is a rat in the room. Maybe it is a Game of Thrones mentality, or maybe it is just James Dolan, where it's coming to the realization, I can't pick on the Knicks right now because they're actually good, despite their performance last night in Denver. So I'm now going to focus in on hockey. See, what was always refreshing about Dolan, Maggie, was this. Just like a lot of people, he didn't pretend to know hockey. He left the hockey people alone for a number of years. He just left them alone, let them do their job. You look at this team, Maggie, there's a lot of talent on this team. There is. There was no other pick other than Alexei Lafreniere. There was no other pick than Capo Caco a couple drafts ago when they made the second overall pick. He traded 2 second-rounders to Carolina for Fox, who might be the Norris Trophy winner this year in the National Hockey League. He's that good of a young defenseman. They traded up for Keandre Miller, who's going to be a mainstay on the back line. They've got Shesterkin in net. They brought in Artemi Panarin. They made an unbelievable trade to get Mika Zibanejad from the Ottawa Senators. You go up and down the line, what Gordon's done, and he was open and honest with the Ranger fan by sending out that letter a number of years ago. What was that, 3-4 years ago now, saying, we are going to go through a rebuilding process here. And we appreciate your patience, and was open and honest and told the Ranger fan exactly what they were going to do, which was refreshing as an organization. He didn't deserve to get fired. He didn't deserve to get fired at all. I mean, and you want to look at Quinn, and I've been critical. You and I have talked about the Rangers this year. You want to look at Quinn, the head coach. I mean, it was very, very ironic, Quinn, to talk about his relationship now with Chris Drury on the ice, off the ice. And if you've been critical of Quinn, well, one of the main reasons why Quinn is the head coach of the Rangers right now is because of Chris Drury, who played a pivotal role in the hiring of Quinn and bringing him from the college ranks into the National Hockey League.
Sure.
And Drury might be a rising star, and he turned down the Penguins job, and he went from assistant general manager to associate general manager with the Rangers, and they might have looked at Chris Drury as being the finishing piece to this team to kind of take it to the next level. For the decision to come down with 3 games to go in the regular season after and being ticked off and reacting to getting torched by the Islanders last week and getting knocked around by Tom Wilson a couple nights ago in the Washington Capitals, and then to have that statement for the Rangers and Dolan to fire who they did yesterday is a complete and utter embarrassment.
Also, I mean, I know that it wasn't tied to the statement, or so many people and hockey insiders, and I'll believe them. I believe their reporting is solid, that it really didn't have anything to do with the statement. But it's like, the season's over on Saturday. Why wouldn't you just wait until the end of the year? You wait 4 days before you fire these guys, but instead, no, you have to do it on the same day where this has been building and building and building, where there's all this attention now on your team and how are they going to react to this Wilson thing and, like, what's going to go on. And so you have to just, on top of it, add all of this drama. Like, this is so Madison Square Garden. Like, it can't just be easy. You're going to make these massive changes that you know are going to have these huge ripple effects, not just in the dressing room, within the franchise, but also with the fan base when you get rid of someone in Gordon, who's been here forever, and JD, who's a legend. Like, you're going to put that on top of this young team that's already dealing with all of this drama, the fact that people don't believe that they have an edge enough, or that they are, you know, have enough heart to actually go out there and fight to defend one of their own teammates. Like, that to me is also just so tone deaf and so Garden. I mean, that's so Dolan. All of this is so Dolan. And, you know, I say it again, but if he was comparing the Knicks and the Rangers and their rebuilds and comparing them to one another, then everyone is screwed, because it's apples to oranges, first of all. And secondly, let's talk about the dirty little thing that we don't like to talk about when we talk about the Knicks season this year. The Knicks have found it's been a great season. I've loved the season for the Knicks. It's been awesome. I can't wait to watch playoff basketball with the Knicks this year. But let's be honest, Moose. The Knicks have found a really nice landing spot here with the Eastern Conference. Has been a little bit soft around the middle. It's like the whole Eastern Conference put on the pandemic 20. You know, out of the top 3, you have Miami, who has not been good this year, consistent. Boston has not been good or consistent. Toronto couldn't figure out whether or not 2 years after a championship, are they a championship team? Are they a rebuilding team? There were other teams in the Eastern Conference that probably should have been much better this year that would have had the Knicks more in the play-in tournament than at the 4th seed. We don't like to talk about it because we don't want to take anything away from the Knicks, but that's the difference also, one of 100 that's different between the Knicks and the Rangers this year. And it's just so short-sighted if they're going to shortcut this rebuild after everything the fans have been through, after you're doing it the right way, and to finally get to where you feel like, all right, look at, you even got the luck with getting the number 1 pick. Think about it. Think about the NHL and how they had to change the lottery system last year because of the pandemic. Remember, we were joking, Gary Bettman's on live TV. You wouldn't need like a beautiful mind math major to figure out what the hell they were doing in terms of the lottery, and somehow the Rangers win it.
Maggie,
like, somehow they win the number 1 pick.
How about
and
the
they
Ranger
just
fan
can't
in this
leave it
area
alone.
celebrating when they got Alexei Lafreniere? The Ranger fan might have been frustrated, but they were on board. They were on board. They might have been frustrated by the lack of grit on this team and getting knocked around, but they were on board with the rebuilding process and where this team was. And Maggie, the other thing is there's such a difference between the NHL and the NBA. Like you look at it, the NHL, if you want to, the division, if you ask anybody that knows hockey, you look at the division the Rangers are in with how this schedule was set up, they were up against it even if everybody stayed healthy. And they didn't. Zibanejad with COVID, Panarin that missed a ton of games because, as you mentioned, the hit piece that was sent out of Russia and everything like that. So
they had to banish Tony DeAngelo. I mean, a lot happened
Tony
this year.
DeAngelo was another one that they had to bring back, even though they didn't want to. And then he obviously gets sent away from the organization. But if you look around the league, in two other divisions, the Rangers would be a playoff team. In the other division, they'd be 2 points out.
It's crazy.
In their own division, they're eliminated from the playoffs because of the strength of that division. Can we have a little sense of reality about where this team is? And the scary thing is, Maggie, is now having this kind of reaction from James Dolan is other NHL teams see it. So they obviously see it. So the patience has worn thin at Madison Square Garden. And now the Rangers want to try and make finishing moves to finish off this team, to try and get them not only into the playoffs, but go on a deep playoff run, which is very, very difficult to do in the National Hockey League. And they don't have they have a boatload of huge prospects and talent on this team. They really do. They have a guy in Sweden, a defenseman that's one of the top defensemen in the world that hasn't even joined this team as well. It was a first-round pick 2 years ago. So, I mean, you look at this Ranger team, how loaded they are with young talent. Now Chris Drury stepping in to finish the piece. And what I would be fearful now is making moves now in the short term that's going to have long-term ramifications. Trying to make moves now that are going to help this team, but you're giving up young assets and you're not getting equal value back up in return because of everybody in the NHL knows now that James Dolan's ticked off, Chris Drury, there's blood in the water.
Yep.
So you know what? Maybe you can rip the Rangers off now because they're looking for that grit piece or that fourth line forward that's going to be able to protect their young assets, or the knock on this team saying they're built too much on skill and there's not enough toughness on this team, something that Brendan Smith last night after the game answered the question. So that's the other fear I have now is how does this team handle it, and the patience, which is really thin at Madison Square Garden with Dolan. We saw the reaction yesterday, and how the hell do you treat a legend like John Davidson the way that James Dolan did yesterday?
Well, wait a minute.
He is as beloved by Ranger fans as any person that has ever, and I ever played for them, broadcasted them. When he came back to this organization, Ranger fans were rejoicing.
Oh, definitely. I'm just wondering, don't the Crunkies own the Denver Nuggets and the Avs?
Yeah.
Maybe they can come back in just like they did with the Melo trade, and maybe they can come back in and just throw a wrench into everything because we've all seen this movie before. I mean, I don't know if it would get to that point, but it's the shorthand. It's called the Dolan playbook. He comes in when he gets impatient because he's been told that by somebody that the expectations are higher than where they need to be. It's not real. It's impatient and it's stubborn. And it's something that will continue to plague both of these teams as long as he's there. Because even as you said, Moose, he always left the Rangers alone.
Always left them alone.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. And that's the depressing aspect. You can't pick on the Knicks anymore. Now he goes to the Rangers, and he clears out two guys that were actually good at their job.